Well, girls dancing, dancers, pedestrians don't even look at the traffic lights because the smoke makes it pointless. What? How are relationships with girls here? It's very curious because they have floating houses and naturally somehow bodies end up in this part of the river. Those were the showers. I mean, the showers, people bathed outdoors in plain sight of everyone. It's the little street of the nightlife. You're going to see it now. Vietnam is one of the few remaining communist countries and is actually quite prosperous, offering many resources. The culture can be shocking from cuisine to customs. And as for the city itself, it's one of the most chaotic motorcycle cities I've ever seen in my life. I'm Naka, this is Japatonic, and we're going to take a walk through the city of Hanoi. We're here in front of the lake, but the fact is that Hanoi is the city of lakes. There are lakes everywhere. Although I don't know the name, it's the most well-known one you always see in tourist guides, the one with a bridge. A building in the middle of the lake like this is the center of Hanoi. The most popular area is where land is more valuable than here. A square meter costs around $80,000, but land is rarely sold since most people already own theirs. Vietnamese people have long been independent, focused on their own lives, and have maintained traditional businesses. Now this country, the number of motorcycles, cars, and everything here is impressive, and here you kind of don't have to look too much. How close is the motorcycle coming? You just have to walk and they just know how to flow, like a harmonious river that knows how to avoid you. And what about now? The number of motorcycles, it produces a very high level of pollution. The air in Hanoi is very, very dirty. All the time it looks like fog, which I don't think is because of the weather, but because of the level of pollution it gives off. The cars and the motorcycles, but the number of motorcycles there are now is terrible. What they do say is that in 1 or 2 years from now, they want to start banning gasoline motorcycles and make everything electric. I guess it's going to have to be very gradual because there are just too many motorcycles. And I don't think everyone can afford an electric motorcycle, just like that. Because also here the levels of poverty, wealth, and all that are extremely unbalanced. A person, a waiter for example, would earn about $2 an hour, an average of $200 to $400. Including the numbers for middle, lower, or upper class in statistics isn't easy either. But it's estimated that a little more than half are lower class. Middle class, about 30%, maybe 40% at most, and about 10 to 15% upper class. Also, the merchants are very hardworking. Here they open in the morning and basically close when there are no more people. They know that the more they work, the more they can earn. And it's incredible how many street vendors there are, people who you can't even call street stall owners, but just people who sit on the ground and start selling things. It's full of them here. I have to say that even though there are more motorcycles here than in China, they honk their horns less than the Chinese, at least less than those in Shenzhen. Here's a Miniso store. It's funny because I saw one in China, and I've heard they're in other countries too. But it's funny because everyone thinks Miniso is a Japanese brand. I want to tell everyone that Miniso doesn't exist in Japan, and it's actually a Chinese brand. Chinese. Cough, 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 the smoke. What? Cough, cough, cough. There are massage places everywhere, and I love it, because at the entrance they usually have pretty girls at the reception, but it's only for massages. Anything related to girls' services is illegal, and therefore it's pretty much hidden. If it's a place with a leather sofa at the entrance, plus a reception and all that, and they say massage, luxury spa, it's not really a service for men. Okay, we need to look before crossing, but it was easy here since the motorcycles had already stopped. But yeah, honestly, the reality is that there are very few traffic lights, and not only are there few, but people don't respect them. In fact, pedestrians don't even look at the traffic lights anymore because it doesn't make sense. People have just lost the habit of paying attention to traffic lights. Someone walks slowly, dodging people well. Everyone has to cross the street this way. For us, the ladies beside us acted as a shield. We're on the famous street where the train passes. It's very nice, but it's packed with tourists. The train passes every 3 hours. It left 5 minutes after we arrived, and the next one comes in 3 hours. The place is very nice, but there are too many people. Well, here it calmed down at the entrance. At the entrance it calmed down quite a bit. In Vietnam, this type of tobacco is common and smoked using a large bamboo pipe. It's very popular and strong in Vietnam. I mean, it's not a drug. It's something completely legal. It's tobacco. I guess it's a more local tobacco that's grown around here. They say it's really strong. It's basically like smoking 20 cigarettes at once, and so people who've never tried it and smoke it for the first time can even faint. It has water in it, so it's also smoked kind of like a shisha. It's also really interesting how they smoke it, because it looks like they're smoking something strong, but it's nothing like that. It's something pretty common here in Vietnam. That caught my attention because there are a lot of people from India who come here as tourists. They told me that the main country people come from for tourism here is China. It turns out that about 10 years ago, the Chinese occupied some islands called the Paracel Islands, which are uninhabited Vietnamese islands. The Chinese took those islands for logistical reasons, claiming they own them. It turns out that what affected the tourism side is that 1 or 2 years ago, China started issuing a new passport that included those islands on the map. And that passport is considered illegal in Vietnam, so you can't come to Vietnam as a tourist. If you have the new Chinese passport, which you can't just exchange for the old one to go to Vietnam, it's the new version. And that's why Chinese tourism has almost completely decreased now, unless it's people who still have their old passport valid. So, to encourage tourism from other places, they opened flights to India, and well, there are a lot of people from India who come here on vacation. In Vietnam, the sale of pet birds is very popular. Older people often keep canaries as a hobby, enjoying their singing and taking them to parks to share songs. The birds can vary in price depending on the type of bird and the type of cage, since there are many that are made of wood and are very beautiful. And this one here is the most recent and most popular national hero of Vietnam, who is the one on all the bills, Dong from Vietnam. By the way, the largest bill of all is the 500,000 dong, which is equivalent to a little less than $20. The fact is that Ho Chi Minh is very popular, and even today he is still remembered with a lot of respect and affection. This man was someone who was born into the lower poor peasant class. He fought for the country's rights, worked to free Vietnam from Japanese and Chinese rule, and opposed the United States. In fact, the Vietnamese are not a resentful society at all. They have no issues with Americans, Japanese, or French, but politically have many conflicts with China. Precisely because of what we mentioned about this invasion of islands. In fact, Vietnam didn't have mandatory military service. It only became mandatory in 2015. Because of the Chinese invasion that came to these islands that year, so young people between 18 and 25, they have to choose when, but they have to do 2 years of mandatory military service, which is one of the remaining communist aspects in Vietnam. Basically, in practice, it would be like municipal salaries. For example, if someone works for the municipality, whether as a street sweeper, public worker, or doctor, they earn almost the same. Between $300 and $400 a month, the doctor trains in a public hospital and then goes on to work in a private hospital. Healthcare is not free, and as for education, they couldn't really explain it to me very well. It's neither free nor paid, or it's free, but it's better to pay, something like that. But when it comes to retirement pensions, if you work for the municipality, then you will have a retirement pension. For example, self-employed people like shop owners don't get a retirement pension, so they must save or keep working as long as possible. Today we're visiting a friend. There's the detail that you have to leave your shoes at the entrance. It's a custom similar to Japan's, but it's very curious because the shoes are left outside. Hi Alberto, how are you?
Welcome.
This is take 2. He invited us to his house and we asked to see it because I was curious what our house is like in Vietnam. This is an apartment, a flat, and this house is huge.
Yeah, honestly, it's really, really big.
How big is this?
About 90 square meters. This house has just 1 bedroom for 2 people. In Vietnam, people live with more and much smaller homes. It's very common, for example, for 3 young people to share a room, even a bed.
Now it's about the budget, of course.
Exactly, this house is quite good.
How much is the rent?
Well, converted to dollars, it's $430 a month.
It's very cheap for that price. In Tokyo, you only get this much space in your house.
In Madrid, you get a room in a shared house.
Definitely enough space for a big table, big couches, a big hotel, and a balcony. The kitchen is really spacious.
The kitchen is one of the best parts of the house.
It has plenty of space for cooking.
It's cool.
The oven, the washing machine, the electric stove, everything. Hallway for the light. What's this? It's empty. Nothing here.
Yes, similar to ventilation. Here are the bathrooms. This one is too small to grow sprouts indoors.
No, but it's really nice. The bathtub is separate. It's a bathroom.
That's something good about it. And here's the bedroom. Desk screen.
Right? The bedroom is also very spacious and...
One good thing is it's not very noisy here.
Are you happy here?
I'm really happy, honestly, with YouTube and the website and all that. It's my hobby, but I also like my job. I've wanted to be a teacher since I was 15, and now I'm fulfilling that dream while also enjoying my hobby. It's not everything, but it's a good mix.
Yesterday when we met and were talking, when you arrived, you came in a very strange way. Like you had been hired for a school, but it had all been a scam. The place, the salary they were offering you, getting your passport, all of that, and you even had to escape at 5 in the morning exactly. Your first experience was terrible, so you left and found a better school.
It was terrible. I spent a couple of months without working thinking, what do I do? Do I take a trip and go back to Spain to look for something? And in the end, I got lucky. But I'm one of the people who pays the least for their house at my job. I mean, people are paying 600, 700. For me, this is a bargain. Even in Vietnam, it's cheap since I don't like overpaying.
No, well, nobody does. You don't either. No, no.
I'm really stingy. I looked for the house carefully.
Okay. Well, Alberto, let's see. A question that a lot of people are going to be curious about. What's the deal with relationships with girls here?
It depends on what you're looking for. There are definitely cultural shocks. For example, when I moved to Vietnam, I downloaded typical dating apps and got a lot of matches. I thought, wow, this is amazing. I've never been so successful. But suddenly when I started talking to them, they were women who were basically looking for a husband. You know, damn, a lot of matches, but in the end, we're not looking for the same thing. You know, of course. So I had to change my description and say, hey, I'm not looking for something serious. And then I got a lot fewer matches, but the matches I did get were more compatible.
Okay, well, good. I mean,
people who are more open-minded and less traditional.
What are Vietnamese girls generally like? Do you see any difference with girls from Spain, for example?
There are a lot of differences on average. People here are less open about relationships and things like that than in Spain, so people are more reserved. Relationships usually take time to grow or improve. The first kiss rarely happens on the first day.
That's similar to Japan. Becoming a couple can happen as early as the second date, which is fast, or by the third or fourth date, which is normal.
In Spain, it was hard for me to start a serious relationship, but here it's easier. And there's also the fact that here people are much more committed to the relationship. I mean, my relationships in Spain were a bit more fragile than here. Yeah, here I noticed that when I was with someone, the person was really committed to being with me, you know? And it's something I really value about the people I've been with in Vietnam because they've truly given me a lot of trust.
And in terms of personality, they have a strong character. They're more submissive. Japanese women, for example, are known for being submissive. But the reality is that lately, that's not really the case anymore. Women often have more character than men. In fact, it's the man who has to be patient. Until about 50 years ago, maybe it wasn't like that. The woman was the one who had to be patient because she was more submissive.
How is it? Let's see. In my experience, Vietnamese women are not submissive. Also,
it's a culture where women work a lot. Here, that's not the case.
Practically everyone I've worked with, all the bosses I've had have been women. I mean, there has even been a female president of the government. Women in Vietnam have a pretty important role. For example, during the Vietnam War, women were in the army and fought alongside men against the United States, for example. Yes, it's true there are gender roles. Traditionally, women stay closer to home, working in nearby fields and handling household duties. And men have the role of being the ones who maybe go farther away to work. But when it comes down to it, there are very strong women, and in my experience, no. My relationships, for example, were not with people who did whatever I wanted. I mean, they were not women who adapted to me. There was a bit of give and take in that sense. I mean, there's a reputation that Asian women are more submissive, but for me that's not true. Maybe they're a bit more committed to relationships. Yes, more traditional, sure, but not necessarily more submissive. It's an interesting topic. I've thought about it a lot too. How can I explain it? Many times, although of course there are all kinds of people, right?
Yes, let's go. It's just me.
I've also been on dates with people who were a bit crazy and very dominant and really not harmonious at all. And that exists too. I mean, in the end, everyone is different, but that's the trend.
We were just talking, nothing special, while the guys at the table in front of us were cleaning up. I've noticed it's become a habit to toss all the leftovers on the floor and sweep them up later, you know? What surprised me was that some leftover dishes were thrown into the lake, not all of them.
It's for the fish, it's for the fish.
That's all I can imagine. The issue of mandatory military service, I looked into it later. It's mandatory in theory, but in the end, almost nobody does it. It turns out it's not really mandatory. If you work or if you go to university, supposedly, if you go to university, you can postpone it until you're 27 years old. But it's actually very, very easy to get out of it, and so basically very few people do it. Justo Alberto told me he asked his girlfriend who has brothers that age, and they say nobody does it. The level of partying on this street is crazy, and we're staying nearby. Lots of noise, lots of commotion, lots of people. And just a block away is the little street where all the nightlife happens. You're about to see it now. This street is barely a million, about 100 meters long, but the number of people here is just incredible. And there are dancers in these bars too. You have the girls dancing there. Well, girls dancing, this is just chaos, a real party area, this. I didn't expect to find dancers here, honestly. I wasn't expecting this. It's very similar to Thailand, this right now. It's interesting that nobody cares that I'm recording. Nobody tells me to lower the camera. The girls don't look away. Everything's fine, companion bars. Well, and I just found out that our Airbnb was right around the corner from all that mess, because when we arrived, everything was normal. It was quiet. I don't know if that's our Airbnb. We were in the middle of the mess, and this is the place where we have the Airbnb. I mean, right there, just meters away from all that chaos and sea of people. I told Kiche I was surprised, and she replied, "It wasn't on purpose. I knew it was lively, just not this lively." Look, how curious is this? It has a little ramp in the middle. I don't know if it's for taking your bike up or what, but it's pretty uncomfortable to walk on, because in the middle you'd have to walk like this or like that. It's very narrow. Here's our little house. You can see a bit of the neighbors, and we've arrived. Well, it's a bit messy because we've already left our things, but this is our apartment, which is pretty nice. I don't recall the exact cost, but it was about $70 a night. Very well located, and it has, well, a fridge, microwave, electric stove, washer and dryer, and very importantly, the shower, well, it's shared with the bathroom. The thing is, it's beautiful there. We're really enjoying it. Bye. Look at this bridge, which is also a little scary, because through the gaps you can see down below there's cement planks. This bridge is already 125 years old. It was built by the same company that constructed the Eiffel Tower, and it was made for connection. Only motorcycles use this area. There's nothing else here but motorcycles and train tracks. And just a few kilometers from downtown Hanoi, if we head toward the river, there's a very, very poor and precarious area, which is quite curious. Because they have floating houses, but they're not floating houses with foundations or anything like that. They have something, but they're basically floating like small houses or boats. The fact is that these people, let's say, found a way to have property without paying for land, and that's because they put their houses in areas where there's water. But let's see, why do they float? The reason they float is because this river, when there are a lot of typhoons, heavy rains raise the water level a lot, and therefore the house stays, let's say, without getting flooded. To get here, which is even hard to reach by car, we had to come crossing a very long bridge. There you can also see crop fields of people who took the land. They have their crops, but also, since the tide usually rises, they only harvest products that grow in the short term, because you never know when you might lose the entire crop. There are many stray dogs here, and it's interesting how many lower class people live here, yet their small houses still look decent. They even have flower decorations and similar things, which is actually nice. Plus, only about 10 or 20 houses live like this. Floating here, it's all tree-lined paths, banana trees and crops. It really feels like Vietnam. Well, there you can see a pretty precarious house that looks more like a place for some kind of activity or something, but yeah, that's definitely a very basic house. Yeah, that already looks like, I don't know, some kind of shed or something like that, but you can see how everything is clearly made so it literally floats. There are tanks, styrofoam, and other things clearly meant to help it float. It doesn't have a defined one, it just has some cables so it doesn't get carried away. The current, I mean, if there's a big flood, the river rises and the current gets strong, it must be pretty tough to be in here. But they still have some things to work out. The place is well equipped, and from what I see, they also swim in the river. There's a nudist area around here, a men's nudist area, and an altar. In Japan, the goddess of mercy is known as Kannon and is depicted as a man. And here, under the bridge where we came from, at the entrance of the neighborhood, let's say, we have two things. One, this used to be an area where a lot of drug addicts came to inject themselves. It was a place where you would find a lot of syringes. But a few years ago, the government put in very strict laws where there is even the death penalty for drug trafficking. And therefore, nowadays it's pretty clean of drugs. The country, which is also very stigmatized, is not normalized at all, since society sees it as something very bad, to the point that if someone is found using drugs, people can report it in some way. And another thing is that here there's an altar set up for the spirits of the people who died in the river, because that's where the bridge is. In a natural way, there are people who have taken their own lives, accidents and floods, or even people who come to swim, and sometimes the current suddenly gets strong. And naturally, bodies often end up in this part of the river under the bridge. This area has always been where bodies are found, and that pattern keeps repeating. They put up this altar to calm and stabilize the spirits of the people who passed away, so they can rest in peace, so they can reach the other world. Oh, look, poor thing. He used to rest here. After his death in 2018, the grave was abandoned and became a place for trash. And over there you can see many offerings from people who must have passed away, bodies they must have found in the area. And there are two very precarious little houses, well, not even a house, and a very basic little kitchen from the area. There's a boat there that I don't know what it's doing. Hello, they asked me if you are a foreigner, where do you go to visit? Oh, thank you. What a nice gentleman. Honestly, I don't like to get too close because I don't want to bother the locals. I don't act like a stranger, but well, if the Lord allows us, well, look, it's very simple. The Lord, there, young people there who are resting, sleeping, there they have the little wood stove. You can see it's a super peaceful place to be also, right? But you see that there are many offerings here. People who lost someone leave them here, and I guess from time to time family members come to leave incense. Things like that. It's kind of similar to Japanese culture. It's not that different. They did leave a lot of little things. Respect for the people who are resting. I don't know, but out of everything I saw in Vietnam, this is the place I like the most. I always like humble people the most. They're always the kindest. We're at Ho Prison, which is a prison that now functions as a museum. It was established by the French at the end of the 19th century for political prisoners who were against the French regime. And after World War II in '54, it became a regular, ordinary prison. And later, during the Vietnam War, it was also used to hold Americans. The Americans never reached Hanoi. But sometimes, when planes were shot down and a parachutist landed nearby, they would bring them here, and for example, at certain times they kept them tied up. If they behaved, they were tied by one foot, if not both feet. If it was necessary to use a bit of force, they would throw cold water on them in the winter. But according to what they say, the Americans didn't have such a bad time here. Therefore, the prison had the nickname Hanoi Hilton. Well, I don't think they had such a great time either. Who can have a good time in jail? This cell was for those who behaved badly, with their feet tied while lying down. It's slanted so the head is lower. So you get a bad feeling, like the blood rushes to your head a bit, and there's very, very, very little lighting. This was like the punishment room, so to speak, the cell. Look, it's interesting that they show, for example, parts from Vietnam. That really caught my attention because, of course, women also fought there. And the fact is that Hanoi, even though it was never set foot on by the Americans, was heavily bombed. So the American prisoners who arrived were actually pilots, right? And look at the people there, for example. They weren't necessarily bunkers. They were basically vertical pits to hide from bombings. Also in the city, but yes, Hanoi was heavily bombed by the Americans. But look how funny this is, how it was when they captured an American. Look at the Vietnamese girl next to the American. It's unclear how tall he was. The American might have been 5'6" or 5'7" or perhaps shorter. And something curious is that this prison also had this part here in the center, right where number 4 is. Those were the showers. People bathe outdoors in plain sight of everyone, and it was a prison for both men and women. It was divided. I guess they took turns to bathe, right? This part is very interesting. This was a piece of what used to be the prison's sewage system. And the fact is that many Vietnamese people, well, not many, 10 Vietnamese people managed to escape through that small space. I mean, back when it was used as a prison for Vietnamese people, they escaped from here, but can you imagine a person being able to get through here? Just imagine the size of those people. At that time, they were just skin and bones, and it was a different sewer without bars. Around 100 people managed to escape here. Vietnamese, let me repeat, before '54. Later, when it became a prison for Americans, none escaped. Prisoners were even allowed mass. Christmas tree, playing sports, which, as you can see anyway, there were very few Americans imprisoned. Here, there weren't even 100. Well, and here is where the mausoleum of Ho Chi Minh is, which can only be visited in the morning. We can't go in, but you can see the embalmed body of the late president of Vietnam. It says, "Long live the Socialist Republic of Vietnam." Interesting. Ho Chi Minh is greatly loved by the Vietnamese for liberating Vietnam from French rule and leaving a lasting legacy. Was he able to defend himself against the Americans? He was a rather austere person, without too many luxuries, and he gave it a lot of importance. Education in Vietnam and Southeast Asia wasn't always prioritized before the 1970s, making him a very beloved figure. As we've said, the temple is beautiful, but it's not much different from others in Asia. What stood out to me most was the size of the pomelos. This pomelo is huge, gigantic. I don't want to touch it out of respect. What really catches my attention is the fact that inside the temple, instead of being silent, there's music playing, like meditation music. That makes me really curious. Well, there's the altar with Buddha, of course. Here, the manchi, the symbol of Buddhism, is also very common. Well, people who died, who, from what I've been told, are people connected to the temple. Honestly, I'm leaving in love with the cultural richness of Vietnam. I really like this country. I highly recommend it. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time. Greetings to you, your family, pet, and annoying neighbor. Ciao.